Welcome to the January 6th Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board meeting, our first meeting of the year. Welcome everybody, and welcome Craig, who has been reappointed to a term.
Thank you for confirming that.
And so we're not expecting Denise, she's not feeling well. We have a quorum, so we'll proceed. You have the meeting agenda. I don't believe there are any changes. Is that correct, question? You have received Jim's meeting notes. Any questions before we approve them?
Move we accept.
Second, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. You have the December 15 minutes in draft form. Any comments, questions, corrections? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion. So motion, second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Correspondence and announcements, I don't have any. So I guess we're set to move into the new application portion of the meeting, and that is for Grace Bible Fellowship Church, 6959 Route 9, site plan, special use permit, wetlands permit renewal. To make this easy, we have seen this before.
Many times.
Many times. And the church continues, I think, to get funds in order and everything ready to go, and has missed a deadline for an extension.
Right. We have only finally in November gotten the approval from the Dutchess County Health Department for the on-site wastewater treatment system, which had to be relocated and expanded to accommodate a larger building. And that took inordinate amount of time, maybe a couple of years. But we have that finally, and so, but along the way, months will pass, and extensions have been asked a couple times, and this time we were waiting that. But indeed, this is not a new application, it's a request for a time extension for meeting criteria. In fact, we finally have both the engineering and architectural drawings ready for the chair to sign and stamp. Then, of course, the church has to, find someone to build it and apply for a building permit within 6 months, or request it another time. But so this is an application that I think was last before you maybe last year, but had been cycling through every couple of years. And there's no change whatsoever to the program or to the plans. Again, it was simply a matter of getting the health department to finally sign off on what the engineer had come up with for a system which requires a pump and a chamber and all those other exciting features on a very flat piece of property. So that's what this is an application for a retroactive application for an extension.
Does anybody have any questions about it? Jim, you have a recommendation on the
Yeah, I don't have any comments. Since we did miss the deadline, we really essentially have to do a reapproval. Nothing's changing, it's just a timeline issue. So I had prepared for the board both a procedure resolution, if you think we need to go to a public hearing, but also an approval resolution. I don't think a procedure resolution is needed, but that's obviously the board's decision. So my recommendation would be to go with the approval resolution, reset the clock for the site plan, special use permit, wetlands permit, essentially a reapproval. Just resetting the clock for all of those tonight with a new approval resolution.
Does anyone have an issue or concern about that?
No, I don't think there was any controversy with the original filing, so that would be fine, just going to approval resolution.
Others? Tom, Edna?
Fine.
Good. All right, Jim, do you want to run through the draft approval? So we're not opening this, there's no need for a public hearing if we just go through this, correct?
Right, the board has the authorization and ability to not hold a public hearing if you don't think it's necessary, because nothing's changed. It's just essentially a timeline paperwork issue. So, but because we missed the deadline, I want to do it as a reapproval,
Okay.
not as an extension, just to make sure we're all covered. So, the draft approval resolution, excuse me, for the board's consideration, again, for the application by Grace Bible Fellowship Church for site plan special use permit and wetlands permit for the construction of the addition to the church, modification of the parking area, and other site improvements at 6959 Route 9 within the RC5. Reaffirming the action is type 2, based upon the information that we've reviewed in the past, which is remaining the same. We are finding the proposed work is consistent with the objectives and regulations of Chapter 125. Waiving the public hearings and associated requirements per Section 12577F. With respect to the application for special use permit, we will ask the board to approve that. With respect to the application for wetlands permit, Ask the board to approve that, and with respect to the application for site plan approval, ask the board to approve that as well. And then again, same reminder, we do all the time that taking this action, you further authorize the planning board secretary to provide the approval resolution to the applicant along with details on the next steps. Reminding the applicant that all materials submitted to the planning board must be the same as those submitted to the building department.
All right,
I move we accept that.
I have a motion.
Second.
All right, I'll hold the board. Karen?
Aye.
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
Edna?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And I'm with that.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Good luck.
Indeed.
It is 6:05. And we move on to public hearings. The first of this evening is that of John Hetherington, 224 Salisbury Turnpike, site plan and special use permit for a solar installation. All right, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Excellent. I'm Shannon from Empire Solar. So I was here like 2 months ago or something, so I wasn't sure if we just kind of picked up where we left off, or I should do a recap, or...
Does the board feel the necessity for Shannon to go through this application?
No.
All right. There we go. Has everybody agreed?
Yes.
All right. And so, Jim, we'll just turn it over to you.
Yep, the only reason we've been waiting was for the DEC jurisdictional determination, which we've been finding, we've been running into a lot lately. There were no other issues at this point. All the other questions have been addressed previously, previous discussions.
Have we closed the public hearing? I don't recall.
Don't think so.
What was the question?
We
Did we
did.
close the public hearing?
All right, so,
It was continued, so.
all right. So I'll ask if there's anyone here from the public wishing to address this application. If not, then I'll ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Jim? You must have a draft approval resolution.
I do, but we'll have to go through the secret resolution first.
Okay?
It is a short form secret resolution, or secret form, but we do have to do these for ground mounted solar because they're not listed in the secret documentation. So, you haven't done many of these before, so we'll just go through them and just please give me an answer of no or small impact may occur or moderate to large impact may occur. First question, will proposed action create material conflict with the adopted land use plan or zoning and regulations?
No.
Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land?
No.
Will the action impair the character or quality of the existing community?
No.
Will the action have an impact on a CEA? The answer is no, because we do not have any in the town. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, and walking?
No.
Will it cause an increase in the use of energy and fail to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation and renewable energy opportunities?
No.
Will it impact existing public-private water supplies or public-private wastewater treatment utilities? Will the action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources?
No.
Will the action result in adverse changes to natural resources?
No.
Will the action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems?
No.
And will the action create a hazard or hazard to environmental resources or human health?
No.
Right, so answering no on all of those, and then have the boards. Draft secret resolution for the board. This proposed action is seeking approval for site plan and special use permit from the planning board for installation of ground mounted solar panels in the rear yard behind an existing house. Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board, in its role as duly established lead agency under seeker, and upon review and completion of the short EAF we just did, as well as associated information, hereby issues a negative declaration under seeker, deeming that an environmental impact statement is not required and stating that such will not be prepared in consideration of the site plan and special use permit. In taking this action, the planning board approves the project to move forward for approval consideration.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion, second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries.
All right, and then one more, if you just bear with me. And that would be the full approval resolution. So for site plan special use permit, approval resolution, Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows in the application by John Hetherington for site plan special use permit under Town Code Chapter 125 for ground mounted solar at 224 Salisbury Turnpike within the RC5 zoning district. Reaffirming the actions unlisted for which coordinated environmental quality review is not required, based upon submitted information, finding the proposed work is consistent with the objectives and regulations of Chapter 125. With respect to the application for a special use permit, asking the board to grant the special use permit conditioned upon approval of the site plan. With respect to the application for site plan approval, finding the work and intended use is consistent with Town Code Chapter 125 and approving the application inclusive of materials by JT Chase Engineering. Thereby authorizing the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan on the applicant's satisfaction of the 3 conditions listed below. Reminding everyone taking the action, the planning board further authorizes the planning board secretary to provide the approval resolution to the applicant along with details on next steps, and that the materials submitted to the planning board must be the same as those submitted to the building department.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, may I have a second?
Second.
I will poll the board. Clerk?
Aye.
Edna?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Karen? Aye. And I vote aye. Good luck.
Beautiful, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Take care. The second public hearing this evening is that for Cleo Sullivan, 159 Cedar Heights Road, minor subdivision of 2 lots.
Hi, I'm Claire Sullivan. This is for a minor property division. I think we addressed everything that was in the last meeting and ready to move forward.
Jim?
So we did get an updated site plan yesterday. I did take a look at it, and I believe that all of the questions that I had and those that have been raised have been addressed. The lot is conforming, so we don't need to go to the ZBA for any variances, so that was confirmed. The additional information we asked for about trees that would have to be removed and put up here, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at the plans, but generally speaking, I think they do address the comments and questions we had had. This is the driveway, this would be the house, the SDS, something would be up in here. The only item that I have that I don't have any paperwork on is that, as we noted before, related to septic, we either have to have a letter from an engineer stating that septic can be put on the lot, if it's over 5 acres, or if you're going to do these test pits, which have been done, they're noted on here, the septic pits, test pits were done, we need to have approval from county health. So I don't think we have either of those that I'm aware of. And that's really the only outstanding issue that I think we have.
We have a letter from the engineer. I don't know where it
Do
is.
we
but
have
we
it?
do. I don't have it. I guess you don't have
You have a letter from the engineer stating that they do believe that septic can be put on the lot?
Yes, yeah,
But you didn't provide.
I guess we,
Okay.
we can.
It is an issue. I mean,
Yeah.
we're continuing to discuss it tonight, but really this coming in, the day is coming in late for our review and
Yeah.
distribution to the planning board.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about it here. How do people feel about this? We obviously, we received everything except that, and you attest to the fact that you have it. We could consider a conditional approval pending receipt of that information. That's one way we could go with this. Or we can defer to wait until we have all that information in hand. John, is there anything else I'm missing here?
Can I just ask
Certainly.
something for clarity
Sure.
on the site plan?
Yep.
Can you go down to the entry? I'm trying to be clear about how this works. Is that the lot, is that driveway the lot line, or is there an easement?
There might be an easement. We were trying to avoid this wall.
You know, I
because
understand,
it was
I think it's a
historic.
great idea, I just wasn't sure how it would work if there's.
I think they were trying to avoid a couple trees and also this excavation. They were trying to
Right,
keep it
but the
minimal.
driveway goes off the lot, the upper lot, right?
Yes.
So onto the other lot, so there would have to be an easement in
An
place.
easement, or, that seems a bit extreme, actually, but when you look at that, it probably is over a little bit, but.
So Jen, you keep circling center line proposed 25-foot wide easement?
Right.
Uh-huh.
That paperwork would have to be submitted as well.
Yeah, and when you're saying it's extreme, it's either accurate or it's not accurate.
I don't know, I mean, it's what they decide, really, what the engineer decides who puts in the driveway.
No. No.
I mean, I don't really get to decide it. so
Well,
I would like it
but my
over
point
the-
is that we have to know exactly what it is going to be. You don't get to decide later. The engineer doesn't get to decide later who puts it in. You have to accurately depict it on whatever we approve.
The surveyor accurately depicted that.
Well, whatever the if you're, you just said you didn't think it was right, correct? Did I hear that? You said it didn't, you said it seemed extreme, you weren't, I thought you were indicating you weren't sure that's exactly where it was.
I think that's what it's gonna be, like
Well,
that.
well, you can't go with you think that's what it's gonna be, because if we approve it, that's what it's gotta be.
That's what it's gonna be.
But Edna's point is, you don't have an easement on that property, or you don't have an easement yet covering it, going in that direction.
No, not yet.
There was it is marked on here that there would be a 25-foot wide easement. That paperwork will have to be submitted as part of the record.
All right, so we're gonna continue this until we have all this additional paperwork. I
That's-
think we need the easement.
It's up to
Well, I feel as the board member, we need that easement before we can go ahead to an approval. How do you, I mean, I was
Yeah,
willing
I-
to look away.
Without a doubt, it has to be on paper, I mean, it has to be on the deed, because it runs with the land. And, we've seen too many
Does it have
disputes about driveways where, unless it's exactly clear exactly where it is, it's likely to cause trouble later.
reflected before we approve it?
No,
The
not in
new
the
owner.
deed.
Can I ask a question? Is there,
Yes, with subsequent owners, yes.
is there a maintenance obligation that's going to run with the easement as well?
I don't know.
Okay.
Have you had discussions about the easement with anybody?
Adele? Yes.
Yes.
And can you answer John's question?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
I
what was the
felt like
question?
we could just work it out. I mean, we can, if we need that, we can do that, provide that.
I think our normal practice is to require a written
A maintenance agreement.
maintenance agreement, and I think from your standpoint, I think that also, there's a little bit more work by having to work that out now, but in the future, our experience has been having it worked out, having it on paper ends up for a smoother life
Okay.
afterward.
Okay. Sure.
Do we just work that out with the lawyers or between us and then agree and have a paper signed exactly?
Well, whoever is going to be subject to the easement right now would have to agree, but then that easement will have to get carried over so that if somebody succeeds in title and someone else is using the easement in the future, they're still going to be bound by the maintenance obligations that are
Yeah.
created.
Yeah. That's
For
what
the
I was
easement.
asking that when we talked about originally, not with you, but with Adele and Josh and the surveyor and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It has to be written on paper and then clear.
Yes, it should be, well, you can talk to your lawyer about it, but it can either be written into the deed, into the same deed that the easement is conveyed, that's used to convey the easement, or you can have a separate driveway maintenance agreement that gets recorded in the county clerk's office and references the deed. So either one functions properly. Your lawyer is probably the one that can help you decide how to do it.
But it's not a shared driveway. It's simply an easement to go onto the other parcel and then back to your own parcel.
Yeah, well, maybe there is no maintenance, but there has to be,
There's
the
some grass
easement has to
cut,
be recorded
trees
to make sure,
maintain.
that the right gets carried over. And if only one party's going to be responsible for the maintenance of the driveway, I would want to, if I was you, I would want to have that written down so that there's no question about that in the future.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we'll continue the public hearing to February 2nd, pending this additional information.
Is there anything else that needs to be?
I hope not.
I hope not. I'd like to.
I think Jim's identified, unless there are other questions from planning board members that they want to raise as part of discussion.
The trees have been identified. Gretchen forwarded to me, the town highway department signed off on the driveway location. It is noted on the plans, the approved driveway entrance. I think, like I said, we've loaded everything except that paperwork.
Okay. So could I have a motion to continue to February 2nd? Motion, second. All those in favor? Opposed, abstention? And let me remind you that we hope to have all of the new information in, certainly our guidelines are 2 weeks ahead of the next meeting,
Okay.
which would be 2 weeks from tonight. But, and we do give people some grace period here, but getting it the day of or the day before is too late. So I would encourage you to,
So it's just those two more things, the easement and what else?
The letter from your engineer.
Engineer, for the septic.
And then
Okay.
okay, and if in the meantime you have additional questions that you think something outstanding, get them to Gretchen, and Gretchen will be in touch with Jim. If you have any qualms about anything and you find something else that you're curious about, get that question to Gretchen as soon as possible. He'll be in touch. She can be in touch with Jim.
I have a strange question that probably doesn't really pertain to any of this, but there was a giant tree on the corner of the property, and the town, not you guys, because I don't think you had anything to do with it, it was close to the power lines, but it was epic, and it was more than 5 feet across, because my son said he laid down on it, and they cut it down and they didn't tell me. Or the neighbor. I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
Don't they have to? Usually when they cut on the street, they do.
I'm suggesting that you would need to confirm who cut it down. Sometimes, I don't know where the central Hudson power lines are there, other things. There might have been other people there.
Looks like you've got overhead wires here.
Yeah.
Oh, it was in the way back of the corner.
Wait, okay, is there a utility easement that runs through here?
No, there's nothing there. It's the power lines that are, I guess they would be here, and the tree was like,
I think it was these guys,
yeah.
and,
They
well, if it's within their easement, then they
don't.
can do it at their discretion.
I think Central Hudson, I'm agreeing with Craig that if it's in their easement, they don't have to seek permission. That's my understanding of how they operate. Certainly that issue what Sharon brought up.
It's too bad, yeah.
I mean, you can, if you want to pursue it, you can call Central Hudson and ask them if they took it down, but it has nothing to do, as far as I can see.
I didn't think it.
Okay,
Okay, so
so
those
we'll
two things.
see you on February 2nd.
Okay, thank you.
The next public hearing for this evening is Philip Carroll, 132 River Road, site plan review and wetlands permit.
Still for the JD.
All right. Gretchen has just informed us that we're still waiting for the DEC jurisdictional determination, so I'm presuming that Mr. Carroll understands we'll be continuing until February 2nd. All right, may I hear a motion? So moved. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Next scheduled public hearing is that of Justin McLeod, 531 Old Wittenberg Road, site plan review, renovation, and addition. The applicant has requested a continuation to the February 2nd meeting. So may I have a motion to that? Motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. That brings us to the last public hearing of this evening, that of Rhinebeck Villas LLC, New York State Route 9G and Mill Road site plan, special use permit, and wetland permit. Good evening, Sean.
Glad I showed up a little bit early. I thought that there was going to be more.
I thought it was going to be a long night.
No, we're all gonna go.
We're not done with you, so.
Oh, good evening, Happy New Year, everybody. I did provide some supplemental materials based on the discussions that we had at the last meeting. I provided a letter on December 22nd with some attachments that addressed the idea of having Mafia do another traffic study. My client and I discussed this matter at length. We don't really think that it's appropriate for us to bear that expense. And I've explained why in the letter. With respect to the WSP well testing, I provided the board with the data that, and copies of the letters that went out to adjacent neighbors, as well as it kind of shows the neighbors that were in, there's an Excel spreadsheet of who received or who was mailed letters, and then also the follow-up peer-to-peer contacts, and it even had notes of some of the conversations that the WSP representatives had with the various landowners. So I think that kind of sheds some light on some of the issues that have been raised in the past, and why that really shouldn't be an issue now. With respect to the wastewater treatment facility location, we had a diagram prepared by Creighton Manning. The conditions to be able to go out there at this time of year and do some type of staking with the flagging and stuff like that, I think that it's a little bit too much of a burden to impose on the client at the time, especially in light of the fact that the determination of significance at this stage, we believe, and obviously we could be wrong, but we believe that we have submitted the materials that are necessary for the board to make their determination. So we're hopeful that the drawing that's been submitted in connection with the wastewater treatment plant, as well as the other information that was supplied in the letter, met the board's satisfied the board's inquiries. And then one other update, I spoke with Rob DuPont, who's kind of been the point of contact with Four Brothers, and it appears that Four Brothers is totally on board with that sidewalk being expanded onto their property, which is a big benefit. So with that said, I don't really have any much more to offer unless the board has specific questions. And it's fine if you don't.
How many neighbors' wells were tested?
Well, that's in the materials that I provided and in the report. I think that there might have been 3 neighbors that participated, and it's also detailed in Jim's notes. I think 3 opted in. 1 across the way, and then there's actually a detailed, it might even be on that sheet of who participated. It might be difficult for you to read because it's a black and white printout, but I believe that they're color coded with who participated, but there were only like 3. The other thing that may be difficult to read is the Excel spreadsheet that I provided. You can read it, the PDF, online or on your computer, and you can blow that up, and that actually does have some detailed statements of WSP people going out to homeowners. One homeowner saying, I want this, threatening litigation, essentially. Somebody else saying that they didn't understand the process or something of that nature, but they detailed the notes of the WSP representative that had the contact with the neighbor's names, address, and that type of information. So it does show that there was an effort to have as many people as possible participate in this. The fact that they chose not to, I mean, that's their decision to make. And I do know that there was some contact even with people reaching out to the the Department of Health with respect to the approval of the well. And the applicant wasn't even required to go out that far of a radius, but we did that. We weren't required to do 1,500 feet, evidently, but we did a larger radius to try and get as many people involved as possible. And I think that that's kind of been the tone of our kind of approach to this entire process, was like, let's get everybody involved. We had the neighbor meeting, you might recall, the Zoom meeting, where we sent out letters to neighbors that were well outside of the area that might have even had to be noticed for the public hearing. But it seemed like, just looking at the aerial photographs, they might have an interest in this. So we reached out to them, and for better or worse, we invited them to attend. We did have a pretty fair amount of attendance. Yeah, okay. So it was only 2 properties. I apologize, but there was one across the road, and then it looks like that's Four Brothers that agreed to participate. But all these neighbors in the back were contacted.
Did neighbors come to the meeting when you invited? How many neighbors came to that?
I have a list, I would say there were at least 7.
And was well testing discussed at that meeting?
Well, water generally,
Mhm.
not the 72-hour test specifically. I don't want to misspeak. I don't think that might have been addressed, but water generally, wastewater generally, the overall project, the emergency access, and access onto 9G.
What I'm wondering is, was the effort to have neighbors cooperate in the well testing, was that done before or after the neighborhood meeting that you invited?
Oh, it was done well before.
Before, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm wondering, I have a concern about a couple of wells being tested for an operation that's going to draw a significant amount of water. And I realize that it's the neighbor's fault, like fault, quote unquote. But I'm wondering if that was the best way to go about this, or if the way that they went about it didn't work, if another process might have been used, like a neighborhood meeting, where people can, meet people face to face, ask questions, sort of get to know each other a little bit, instead of having a stranger show up at your door or get something in the mail that sounds maybe just a little threatening.
Well, the letter's in there. I don't think it's a threatening letter at all. I think that the effort to go and contact people and actually to knock on doors is a significant effort that was undertaken in order to do this. I think that the outside agency that's responsible for approving the well saw that this was more than adequate and approved the well. So that's the outside agency that's tasked with the specialized knowledge to make this approval, and they did so. So while I respect what you're saying, I disagree that it is somehow going to affect the determination and significance.
I'm not suggesting necessarily that you're at fault. I'm simply expressing a concern about drawing an awful lot of water, in the center of all of these homes, and I don't think we know whether it will affect them or not. That's really my concern.
It's a pretty small data set on which to base a determination. And one of the things that one of the neighbors said at the hearing was that they had been presented with a piece of paper from whoever was doing the well testing that was pretty much a hold harmless.
Which is not true.
Well, and I saw the letter from WSP, and in WSP's letter, it says that they're fully insured and will, handle any damage that's related to this investigation. But there was a subcontractor involved in doing the actual testing. So I wonder to what degree there was a disconnect between what WSP has as their routine practice as opposed to the routine practice of the plumber or whoever.
No, I understand your concern, and I think that if you look at the spreadsheet that's attached, and you look back at who made those comments, their comments are reflected in they met with somebody in person.
All right.
And I'm not here to, I wasn't there. I can only say what was issued by WSP.
Right. There were a couple of comments that were highlighted in red that indicated that there was a certain amount of animosity involved in those particular.
And I think that the 3 people that have spoken about this issue actually were contacted by WSP, and I believe their names and a summary of that contact appears in that spreadsheet.
Right. So what I'm struggling with is the record showed that there was a 57-foot depression for the 72-hour testing period, and then there was just a 90% recovery. And that was considered to be, within parameters. But I don't know if that's good or bad, or if a broader investigation might be helpful in determining whether or not there's going to be a significant impact.
Yeah, like I said, the county's tasked with granting this approval. And they granted the approval based on all the information that's been prepared by people that are specialized in this area, hydrogeologists, which I'm certainly not one of those. So, again, when I go back to what we're here for today with respect to the determination of significance, I mean, that's a valid concern to raise, but, we, as far as the applicant's concerned, we did what we needed to do in order to get the approval. You guys declared yourselves lead agency. Department of Health could very well say, no, like that's not, the well's not good. They didn't say that. They said that the well is sufficient. And it's not in my client's interest to construct a hotel that's either A, not going to provide enough water for the hotel itself, or have some type of adverse negative impacts on other people that would create outrage. It's probably not the best thing to do from a business perspective.
Is your client going to operate the hotel?
That's correct.
Other planning board members, before we talk to Jim about where we want to go tonight? So you did indicate, we had indicated at the last meeting that we would get a price quote from Mr. Mafia and get back to you. We did fail to do that. There were circumstances that got in the way of that happening.
Yeah, sure.
But in the meantime, you spoke with your client has refused to even consider it without knowing what the price is.
That's correct. Just because the intersection that's at issue with the Mafia
Correct.
Mafia report is an off-site condition. We have a report that relates to our entryway. We have preliminary DOT approval from what I understand. And this middle road is a town road. And the town very well, I think Jim might have even touched on this at the last meeting, that there was some type of analysis done back in the past. But, if the town has concerns about that intersection, they're most certainly welcome to approach the state about that. But I think it's, from the client's perspective, that doesn't really involve our project, that intersection. Our entryway does. And it's not like a retail shop where people are coming in and out throughout the day. You'll probably have most of your traffic coming in at one point in time and then leave at various points in time.
Very likely right around rush hour. People are leaving, between 7 and 9 in the morning, coming back,
Sure.
5 to 7 at night would be pretty typical. And those are the times at which there's a, very high
but
usage.
does the construction of that hotel create a significant environmental impact with respect to traffic?
That's the question.
Our studies say it does not. And the DOT has
And the neighbors continue to raise their concerns and their feelings that it does contribute to additional traffic.
Right.
So
Now,
that's why that is, I just want to confirm and reaffirm that the reason we were looking for a third party, interest to look at this was to see if we could get closer to resolving where we are. We seem to be at an impasse between what you're saying and what the neighbors are observing.
The thing is the neighbors, they're backing up this concern with emotions, not with facts or studies. They haven't come forward and says, this is such a big concern, we will do a study. They're just, they were getting really quite emotional over this intersection. And I don't know, you got studies from the state, you got emotions, feelings. I go with...
I don't think we have studies from the state.
Well, he said that they...
I thought Jim had mentioned that there was some type of study done in the past regarding 9G.
So that's not part of your...
Studies have
Not
been
part
done.
of no, we have our own study.
Studies have been done by the applicant's representatives, which is Great May. DOT has been looking at that and reviewing those. Years ago, I was trying to find the date, but it was probably, since 2018, so 4 or 5 years ago. I took a look at this corridor on behalf of the town, at the request of the town board, because we knew this was coming, and this has been in the works for several years now. We started talking about this before COVID. Because we knew this was coming, and because we knew that Ruby's was moving to the stamp property. So we got DOT involved at that point to talk about these two big projects, knowing that they were going on, because I thought that they would have concerns about this intersection. I thought there was the potential that they may say they want to widen the road to a third, center turn lane from one end to the other. At the time, they said no, that's not what they were interested in. They were going to deal with these, projects as they came along, and so that's what they've done. But you've seen what they did. They requested Ruby's the stamp, and now the DOT is reviewing, this one separately. So this has been on this whole corridor from the bridge approach down to 9 has been on DOT's radar for several years because we brought it to them. The town brought it to them, stating, we know this is coming.
Right.
What do you have concerns about?
But
So the larger picture has been there from us, and I did a quick land use assessment and just looking at what happened here.
But it raises a couple of different issues. One is just with the speed and safety issue, which is normally what DOT is involved in. There's also the issue of added volume. And by widening roads, we know that historically that invites more traffic in. And that's one of these things that's going to have an impact on the town that I think warrants our special attention. And having an outside set of eyes to bring up and explore issues like that, I think would be a benefit to the board. And if we were to enter a positive declaration on that one feature, what would the subsequent steps have to be? I mean, the applicant would have to come up with some sort of mitigation options, right?
We would have to go further into review and discussion of that particular element.
Okay.
Maybe it would be helpful, Jim, to look at what the extreme is. Because I think we also have to remember this project, I don't think is going to be the extreme. If this was a new Hudson Valley Mall, maybe it would be considered extreme by the standards of seeker. But I think when we look at what the extreme is based upon seeker, this is going to be a fly on the wall, unfortunately, based on their overarching rules not taking in effect the town of Rhinebeck. But we can't, that's not our job. Our job is to follow what that document says.
Well, also these steps are all incremental. Like we've got Rudy's service and there's IXL gym. There are all of these things going on that little stretch of road. And these measures are incremental to the point at which they become extramental. And I think we want to avoid that.
They are, but that's why I just brought up that when we did do that study, that was so DOT would realize that this was all happening. Because I did think that there was the potential they were going to want to assess these together and see what that might be. I'm not an advocate for widening roads, don't get me wrong. I'm a bike guy, so I'm not advocating that. But this is why we brought it up with them, because we didn't want to see this incremental, because we know this is a gateway into the town. It's a congested corridor, particularly when we have big events going on, in the town, in the village, whatever. So we wanted to bring it to their attention. They didn't see there being a connection between Ruby's stamp and this property in terms of changes to the road. And at that time, again, I don't think we even really discussed any major concerns related to the road, other than what already exists, which is left turns and volumes and speeds. But nothing that they had discussed that I can remember, where we discussed a signal or a roundabout or any of that. None of that came up in the discussion. The third lane in the middle that I thought might come up, none of that came up in the discussion. They said it would be site specific because of the spread of the distance. There was certainly some concern, related to Middle Road and this, but in general, these types of developments from a land use perspective, you would want to see on a state route or a higher classification road versus, say, a lower classification road, further into the town, or a town road, narrow road. These are generally where you want to see these higher volume type uses land. Well, that's a general high level statement. I'm not saying for this in particular. But
Middle Road is a terrible road to try to cross 9G on. It is now, it has been for a long time. If this development doesn't happen, it will still be a terrible road to try to cross 9G on. 9G is very busy with fast traffic at rush hour. I don't like to walk along it. I tried that once. So what I'm hearing is there's a need for the town to focus on 9G, right? And perhaps work with the DOT in some way. I don't really think it's the responsibility of this applicant to do any more additional traffic studying.
Well, John?
Well, I don't think that's what's being asked right now. My understanding of what's on the table is the question about whether the planning board should hire its own consultant to take a look at this, to give the consultant's opinions on the material that's already been submitted to the board by the applicant.
But they would have to pay for that.
On traffic.
Right?
Traffic. And if the board, it is possible for the town to make an approach to the Department of Transportation, but if you're going to do that, you have to have information, expert information on traffic to bring to them to support your position. So you need either something from your own consulting engineer or from a consulting traffic engineer to get the dialogue started with the Department of Transportation, if that's what the town decides to do. So it's not asking for the applicant to do more at this.
Well, wouldn't
At
they
this
have to pay
juncture.
for that if we got a consultant to look at the issue?
Well, they're refusing to pay for it, but you can hire them anyway. You've got a budget and you can hire them anyway if you think it's important to have the information. And I think that, it's up to you board members, but, somebody killed on 9G last weekend. And,
South of this project.
They're not even close to this.
I didn't say it was at this project.
Well, I'm just saying, 9G extends, forever, but the accident that you're talking about wasn't near the project. And just, the genesis of this whole entire discussion was actually from the intersection that Edna just referenced, the Middle Road 9G. And so the Mafia report was to kind of see how this project would impact that. That was my understanding, was like to come in and hire another expert to oversee or look at what our experts have already put together. So we have supplied
That
data.
happens all the time in site plan review.
Well, I don't think that intersection is tied to our entrance.
Well, it's an off-site impact of your project, which is a proper area of inquiry under seeker. If you want me to get you the cases, I will. There are a ton of them.
I don't know if you want to go there right now. I'm not here to litigate this matter. I'm here to just advance the application. This is a threshold determination of significance. We've been before the board for quite some time. The applicant has acted in good faith at every moment. And it's just that at this point, we don't see why we should have to pay for...
We're not asking you to pay. What I'm talking about is you've already said you don't want to pay. So the board can decide whether they want to hire their own consultant or not. And you guys don't have anything to say about that, as long as we're paying for it.
Okay.
All right, good.
Yeah.
It's up to the board whether you want to go ahead and do that. There are issues. All I just want to say, Jim, you're better qualified to talk about cumulative impacts, which is under seeker. That's an appropriate consideration. That's when we're talking about aggregations of traffic volume over time as a result of various projects along a particular stretch of road. There are cases out there on that. And as I said, there's cases on off-site impacts to intersections. There's a ton of shopping center cases that are out there on that subject. And we can get into that if that ends up where this goes. But
Well, I think that if we had hotel cases, that might be a little bit more relevant. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
We'll take it up as a board here in a minute. I would just say that for me, in looking at the situation in which we used Mr. Mafia previously, we were at a point where we had various opinions about traffic impact on that particular project, and we chose to go in the direction of an outside person looking at it. And in the end, what I observed through that process was that extra bit of information from Mr. Mafia actually played into the hands of the applicant and moved that project along, because it was a confirmation that what the applicant was alleging was accurate. And that gave the planning board, in my opinion, a sort of safety net in terms of moving forward with that, in that we've taken that extra step to say, as we went through seeker, yes, we did due diligence. We wanted to confirm that this was true in the face of neighbors, I won't say to the same extent or to the same number of people, but who felt as adamantly about this issue as some of the neighbors in this neighborhood do as well.
No,
So I'm just clarifying for my planning board members, and not the public, because they're not here, why we felt at that time and why this came up again as a resource available to us to help us better understand the situation. I personally still think it's a good idea, but I'll leave it up to my other members of the planning board to weigh in on what their opinions are.
Well, I feel like, you know, the people who live there locally and transverse these intersections all the time have a very keen understanding of what those traffic patterns are and how they're likely to be impacted, but their opinion is going to be uninformed and speculative. And many of them have a, you know, somewhat biased view of whether or not this project should move forward. And I think having someone who has the knowledge base and doesn't have that skin in the game to give us an unvarnished opinion.
Okay. No, I think you've indicated your position that you don't think it's necessary.
Well, where I'm coming out is, it seems like there's need for a broader study of that whole 9G stretch, something similar to what Jim did previously. And, you know, if we were to hire a consultant, why would we want to focus just on this area rather than more of the stretch?
I agree with your concept that it's needed, and I can tell you that what Jim is referring to before, we actually brought this to the town before in terms of looking at that stretch, not only because of traffic, but because it was considered a gateway to the community, and we had concerns at the time that it had not been properly and adequately studied in the comprehensive plan, and that no one was looking ahead to the potential impacts not only of traffic, but of the changes to the landscape in terms of a gateway. And so we thought this needs to be looked at because there are so many parcels along here that have the potential to be developed commercially, and that it could turn into a strip mall type experience, which if continued would continue to add more traffic to it. So we as a planning board have done that. We can certainly go back and make that recommendation again. And I believe we should and could. I don't think that one necessarily negates the other. I think right now my reason for wanting to look at this is because this application is before us. I don't see them as mutually exclusive. But I get your point. Tom?
I think we should let it go and work towards getting a comprehensive study done, but don't hold this project up for what should have been done before.
Well, I'm not saying should have done, because it's been cumulative.
Something should be done for the whole area, but it shouldn't be held up for a study.
Sharon?
When I come out of Brugge's service, I almost always have to go north because I cannot cross the road. So I always have to go up north and then make a left down to Middle Road. And then I go up Old Post Road and avoid all the traffic. 9G, no matter what part you're on, is absolutely horrible anymore. By the time you get to the light, it's all backed up, both directions. So it's not this project that's causing that, it's 9G itself, and it needs to be looked at.
So how do you feel about an additional traffic study? Because as John said, that we can as a board go forward with it without the support of the
I think
applicant.
we could do the study, but without something to get the state to do something.
That's on the town. And I can say, you may be aware, one of the prior members of the public who were here, now of course I've lost it, was in touch with a member of the town board requesting that something be done about this. And they had also written to DOT. And so, you know, there is the potential for the town to ask for something to happen, but the quote that I have, and this is from a member of the town board, is they've not yet heard whether the applicant has agreed to do this, and this was the traffic study. If they agree, we'll have more information. Another alternative is that the town board could make a request of New York DOT to have such a study done, but I'd like to wait and see what the applicant's response is. So you know, we have not approached the town in terms of this. I see it as separate from, I see it as not totally separate from this application, but supplemental to this application. But as I'm pulling the board to find out what you want to do specifically about this, that's not saying we're not going to go back to the town and say, you've got to do something up there. Sean, what do you think?
I think it's a total waste of funds.
Okay. So I don't think I have to take a vote.
I think we should again look at what in seeker, if we look at that as a group, I think that needs to be in context before we decide to spend money. That is everyone's taxpayers' money. I think we need to look at, does this meet, this is going to be extreme for us to say yes. And if it doesn't, then it's not a good use of funds.
Okay.
I have a question that's kind of related to this, and it relates to Sean's earlier letter that said that our efforts can't be duplicative of what the DOT's assessment was, or something of that nature. That basically the seeker process is kind of, we're kind of bound by that. We can't go back and kind of reiterate the things that have been handled by other jurisdictions. And I was a little bit confused by that because I really thought that seeker is a parallel and complementary process to the site plan review and the other things that the board is likely to be involved in. So if we make a determination under seeker, does that short circuit any other determinations that we might have as a board for site plan review? So
I understand. I think I understand what you're saying, and I don't think that if, for instance, if the board was to give a neg deck on this project, and then something comes up after you do that, and you're like, whoa, this isn't what we were expecting, you can always reopen that as the board. That's my understanding of it. If there are minor changes that are not significant, then obviously you wouldn't need to do that. But this is just the determination of significance is like a step in this process, and then we get into site plan where we can get down to the real details of what's going to be going in there. If the board was to come across an issue and say, this isn't what we were under the understanding of when we voted a certain way, then you still have jurisdiction over the issue.
I got a sense from that letter that the applicant's position was that we weren't to second guess the pronouncement of the DOT.
Well,
and that I think that we're supposed to be involved in a broader investigation of the facts.
Well, you have your own jurisdiction over this. You're otherwise seeker those areas where other agencies have jurisdiction, involved agencies, okay? Right. If you didn't have your own jurisdiction over the issues, then the rule would be just that it goes out to the involved agency, and if they say yes, it comes off your plate. That's not what happens. And there's a policy decision that was made when seeker was enacted that seeker compliance with seeker and environmental review would take place at the very beginning of the review process, because as you well know, there are many applications where the seeker review process results in design changes to the project that are connected to the mitigation of significant potential impacts that are identified during the seeker process. And so the idea is that the most efficient way to conduct a review is to have the seeker review at the beginning, to have, in the instance that review results in changes to a site plan or changes to a project design, that it's more efficient to do that then, so that you enter into the site plan review process with that already baked into the project, rather than making decisions at seeker, waiting to see whether things crop up during the site plan review process, and then taking big step backward of reopening the seeker review process and then circling back through the site plan review process again after that's done. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, it does, and that comports with what my understanding of it is, in that, you know, we don't, DOT has its own jurisdiction, it has its own list of responsibilities, and that list differs from ours, so we're engaged in a parallel process of which seeker is a part, but we're not compelled to take the pronouncements of DOT saying, well, we don't have a problem with this particular project. We have to come to our own, we're in fact responsible for coming up to our own conclusions based on local conditions.
Yes, that's right. I'm involved in another case right now in another municipality where the circumstances are similar, where there's a high volume road, or the project's going to intersect with that road, and the Department of Transportation approved the plan that's being advocated for by the applicant, but the planning board in that municipality, for similar reasons here, where there's been public concern stated by people who use the road, the planning board's not satisfied that the plan approved by DOT satisfactorily addresses the traffic safety issues. And that process hasn't concluded yet, but
Jim?
it happens elsewhere.
Well, I was just saying, I put the transportation questions up on the screen just so you can see what they are. I completely agree with everything John said and what's been discussed, but just did want to mention that if the planning board decides you don't agree with the DOT and the applicant's point, we're at a standstill. The town planning board and the town do not have the ability to say your driveway has to be X and going onto a state road. DOT has to write that permit. Like, it's a DOT permit on the state road. So there has to, eventually we have to come to, consensus on this. It is two agencies. You don't have to agree with the DOT, but then that means we have to work with them on whatever it is that final thing is going to be. So both sides, all three, I guess, the applicant, DOT, and the planning board all have to agree on this in order for this to move forward. So, well, the planning board can, we can do this through seeker. I think that's only part of it. It's a site plan, special use permit, and wetlands permit that really is where the teeth are of the planning board, and seeker is part of that. This is kind of an assessment version of it. And again, the seeker is, it's holistic, right? It's for projects that span from, small to building a new Buffalo Bill Stadium, right? Yeah. So we all have to keep that in context when we discuss that when we do these type ones. But just in terms of the discussion of the study and everything, I kind of feel like that's falling on the zoning law side of things, your site plan special use permit, and not the wetlands, but your site plan special use permit, because the questions specifically that are asked in seeker, I think, are a little more higher level. I mean, we can answer right now, is it going to be more than 500 vehicles in the parking area? The answer is no, right? So we can go through a number of these. There's no issues with transit. There's no transit here. Roads to grade existing bike and pedestrian accommodations. There aren't any, right? There aren't any. I mean, some people probably ride it. It's a driveway, so you'll have another conflict point, no question. But so when it comes to seeker, I'd say, from my perspective, it's keep in mind what we have to do for seeker, and then how that plays in just being a part of the overall site plan. If we want to discuss other traffic studies and things as it relates to the town's concerns and DOT permitting and the design, we can do that. I'm not sure it has a ton of impact on this, unless you see that it impacts one of these issues, and then obviously we can look at the criteria that we have on the website that tells you how to answer these questions. But I don't think the current questions we have, in my opinion, is not going to have a huge impact on these particular questions. But that's just my personal opinion.
All right, so if you can refresh my memory, last month we a month ago. Last time we got through how many of the sections? Let me see.
So we have 18 questions. We have completed 5. We got partially through a 6th one. And there are 18 to do.
Would you like to proceed this evening with going through a couple more?
Yes.
Should we
Okay.
say traffic?
Excuse me, is it okay if I sit down? I didn't want to be rude if there was any other questions.
No, you can sit down, you just can't stand back up.
Thank you, Craig.
All right, Jim, I'll leave it up to you to lead us through the next sections that you're recommending, unless people feel compelled to go directly to one or the other.
I think Sean brought up a good point. I mean, that
Say
Question
traffic is
13.
on our mind, so let's jump into it.
Yeah.
All right, there seems to be consensus.
I mean, as long as we're clear that this is not the end of the, of our
Well, shall we
duties.
finish the one we got halfway through,
Yeah, okay.
and then move to traffic?
The point is, we need to go through it, right? We need to get through it, and if we have questions, we can even still put a question mark next to some of these. Some questions are full
Understood,
questions.
yeah.
But at some point, we've got to run through this thing and see where the board stands on this, so that we can then continue to move forward. And where we have questions, we'll have questions. If we find there's a moderate to large impact, then we'll have to discuss what that means for moving forward.
Understood.
But we do at least have to see where the board members fall on each of these questions.
Okay.
At some point.
Go.
So if you'd like to start, why don't we start with transportation since we're there, and Sean put that on the table, so we'll do that.
What a guy.
Zero.
I'm all for others telling me which ones we want to go for, because to be honest, we plan on looking for the easy ones. So impact on transportation, again, as I noted, this is asking if the action may result in change to the existing transportation system. Obviously, we're making the driveway cut on Mill Road, so the answer is generally at a high level, yes. So, do you believe, based on your reading of the traffic impact study and everything that you've read, that the projected traffic increase may exceed the capacity of the existing road network?
No.
Will the proposed action result in the construction of paid parking area for 500 or more vehicles?
No.
Will the proposed action degrade existing transit access?
No.
Will the proposed action degrade existing pedestrian and bicycle accommodations? And then would the proposed action alter the present pattern of movement of people or goods?
Well, not much faster.
I don't see any changes to the traffic to the roads, I guess, which is what I would consider to be the movement of people or goods. I can certainly open up the online one if you want. It's an additional driveway people can go in and out of. I don't see it as a material change myself to a change in the movement. 9G is going to remain 9G, there might be left turn lane, but it will still allow for the through traffic that exists today, one lane in each direction with potential modifications.
Yeah, and for the purpose of this assessment, I would say if anything, it would be small. It's not like bringing in a, as you
Commercial
mentioned,
only lane,
it's 60 unit, you might have 40, 50 automobiles in an hour.
Right, I don't remember the volume on 9G, but it's pretty significant compared
Yeah.
to the 40 or 50 vehicles. It's thousands of vehicles a day. Okay, so for transportation at item 13, the board generally finds that the action will not make a material change in the transportation system as it relates to the specific questions listed there.
Yep.
I guess in terms of the next one we want to do, I'd like
So we
to,
got half.
December 9th, right, December 1st, we got halfway through question 9, which was impact on aesthetic resources, and I believe the reason that we got partway through it is that we did have a lot of discussion with the neighbors about the wastewater facility visibility,
Right.
as well as the potential visibility of the buildings from 9G. So, do you want to go back into that one? Would you like to go somewhere else? I mean, we have to hit it eventually one way or another.
Let's just go back into it.
So based on my information, I don't believe we actually answered any of the questions. We had discussions, but I don't think we actually went into any of these in detail.
If I recall, one of the issues was the exact size of this unit, and we weren't able to get any clear determination. I mean, we got some brochure information early on that it's basically a big metal box, and the brochure showed that they could be varying sizes. And so what the exact expected dimensions of this unit are.
And the fencing or whatever around
The
it.
fencing and signage and any other
And that stuff hasn't been answered. They were supposed to come back with a drawing that showed basically what it kind of might look like.
My notes were that we would ask for rendering of the visibility over from 9G.
And we did not get that.
Well, it was a request that was made.
The request was made, right, a rendering,
And we provided a drawing with my letter from December 22nd.
The line of sight,
Yeah,
but that's not really the
that's not a
same thing.
rendering of what it's gonna look like,
so what type of rendering do you,
what it's going to look like.
well, it's a container. We've shown you
I think the
pictures.
point we made, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm not remembering correctly, people were expressing the desire to see exactly what this was going to look like. Not sort of a container, but what are we going to see from the road, correct? Like,
And my concern was, what would the screening look like? Would it be foliage? Would it be an actual,
well, where are we going to see from
device?
the road?
Yes.
Right,
And what the neighbors are going to see, it's a
Right.
concern from behind.
but one of the issues is where on the road. You know, if you
Got it.
set yourself in front of Four Brothers, you're not gonna see anything.
Got it.
But there are other vantage
But the
points.
thing is if they give us a rendering from whatever point you see, we'll know what they're looking at. You know, what I'm
So
saying.
let me make a suggestion that we're still at the same point with this question that we appear to have been at last month,
Mhm.
and that we move on to another section of seeker and circle back to this when we have
Yeah.
enough information before us to know what we're looking at.
Sounds good.
Just one question. After seeker is completed, we're going to continue the site plan review, right? And we have the ability to ask for that rendering during the site plan review
Yeah.
process.
We can also ask for it as we have now.
Right, but we don't actually need it now.
The architect was here last meeting.
No, I was here last meeting. He was here the meeting.
And he said he was gonna come up with, a drawing, a rendering,
Yeah,
approximation,
I think that,
and he said it wouldn't be a problem.
well, I provided you with what the team has come up with in response to that request. That said, I do understand the overall concern with respect to what is it going to look like. But from an environmental impact perspective, for purposes of SECRA, when you have the applicant that has already expressed its willingness and desire to screen, to set it lower, to do whatever it can to make it as less of an impact and mitigate any impact that it could have from a visual perspective, I think that the board's in a position to at least make that determination whether or not it's going to be a significantly adverse impact.
How do you know how to screen it if you don't know what you're screening?
We're willing to screen the unit.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but that's an abstract unless...
No, but like I just said, during the site, my understanding is that we're here for the SECRA determination of significance. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's why we're here. I would think that going down into the details of site plan, that's where the board can say, no, we want this type of vegetation here. For instance, on the 9G side, we've expressed our willingness to put up certain trees. I think, Craig, you might have brought that up as an issue. And we're willing to do that. We're not drawing the trees that we're going to put in there right now, but the applicant has said that we were going to go ahead and plant these trees to mitigate any type of visual impact that those buildings may have from 9G. So the determination can be made. I don't know if you need to see the entire project to make the threshold determination whether or not this is going to be a significant impact.
Well, I don't think we can do number 9 unless we know what we're doing or not.
I think you can.
You said it's gonna be a box. Well, that's irrelevant, Is it gonna be a box car? I mean, you look at those semi-trailers. Every day I go by those semi-trailers and go, why are they there? So is that what that's gonna look like?
So previously, we provided you with photograph materials depicting what this system looks like. And then with the caveat saying, we don't know if this is going to be the exact system because we still have to get other permits. Those other permits cannot be issued without a determination of significance. That's where I was at 2 or 3 meetings ago, trying to say that. And then I believe it was Edna that said, well, tell us worst case scenario. So the size of the box that's depicted in the drawing that was submitted is the largest box that you can get from the manufacturer. So that's what we went with. But, you know, I don't really know. You want a rendering, I can go back to the team and see what they can do, but it's still not going to be exactly what is approved until we can find out what our approvals are from the state.
So these were the images that were provided. You know, what the life was partially buried. This is the cut sheet, obviously showing a significantly large one. Just going back to the EAF. Oops. I lost it. Sorry. Going back to the seeker form itself. I think the reason I just want to mention, I think the reason this is coming up is because I think it'd be difficult for the board to answer C. I think we can answer A, B, D, E, F. I don't know that the board, at this point, based on what I've heard, feels that they can comfortably answer answer C, and whether or not there's no small impact or moderate to large impact. I think the other ones we probably could. This is where I think we're getting hung up in. You know, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just trying to kind of move things along.
Yes.
I think that's meaning that you don't feel you can complete the seeker analysis in full, at least as it relates to this question.
Yes.
I think the other ones we probably could because they're pretty straightforward, and I think. You know,
Would it be helpful to look at examples?
Sure.
I can
The
send-
backup examples.
But I can send like Statsburg Holdings ones that they sent. So you have an idea of what specifically they're looking for, because that's a big one that we just did. The Senate renderings from different
Yeah,
communities.
I think if you look at examples, it's going to be like
You're talking about
something
the
extreme
work.
compared to
So you're talking about the workbook, right? So
yes,
question nine-
sorry. Yes.
Question 9, which is impact on aesthetic resources.
But your 9C was the specific.
I think 9C is the one where we're
Okay.
getting hung up myself. I'm not speaking for the board, just
No, I
for
understand.
landing. So when we go through that, then, you know, I'm trying to remember which one's which. That's the distance question. Let's see. We're seeing, so there are numeric thresholds, you know, we talked about all that stuff. The question we were getting hung up on, I believe, is this one.
Yeah.
So this is where we want to be. So it's the analysis of part 1. You know, the analysis, is the project site visible from a designated scenic resource? How much of the site is visible? How much distance is there between the project and the resource? Is the visibility seasonal or not? And what general land uses exist between the project site and the scenic resources? So here is your information on will there be an impact. Yep, sorry.
What's the scenic resource?
Well, that part I can talk about. There are official designations of what scenic resources are. Here. So like some item A, which is not what we're talking about, C, asks if the action will be visible from any officially designated federal, state, or local scenic or aesthetic resource. Based on my review of the Part 1 questions, reviewed by the materials, the property is located along an officially designated scenic or aesthetic resource, that being State Route 9G, and is within 5 miles of other publicly accessible federal, state, local scenic or aesthetic resources, those being the Hudson River, National Register of Historic Properties. But this project site itself is not scenic based on any official designation or the definition of the term as noted above. If you remember, we had some issues with this one when we did Rockledge several months ago, the same thing. What is the scenic resource? Is it on the site? Is it what you're on looking into the site? What does that impact?
Well, part of the development will clearly be visible from 9G.
Right, which is why we're then asking for you were asking for the rendering of what this one element is going to look like. And the other impact discussion is the buildings themselves, which we've discussed, you know, the applicants that they'll plant some trees. But I do remember we also discussed the color of the buildings in the past. I think they were green and yellow.
And we went, well, we changed, they actually voluntarily changed the
Discussing
palette
change
of
those.
the buildings because they were to some extent visible.
Yeah.
So all of that kind of rolls into it, but there's nothing, 9G itself is the resource. There's nothing else within the immediate area that would be impacted. I guess it's a fair statement.
And also, I think, just looking at the waste treatment plant in isolation is a bit of it's going to be misleading because the rest of the project is actually more visible, it's closer to the road, and is more impactful. So,
Right.
So are we looking?
I think we should look at the large impacts. The project will obstruct or partially obstruct publicly accessible views of scenic resource. No.
Where are you reading?
On the third one down, the project is not in sharp contrast to existing land uses in the area, but is very visible.
Yes.
Very visible?
Well, we don't know. I don't know.
They're saying they're going to screen it.
And we can require them to
So we
screen.
can require them to screen it, which has been discussed and has been approved. Project situated so that it changes the visual aspect of the scenic resources. I mean, that's moderate to large. If you read moderate to small, it's like scenic, seasonally you might be able to see it. But few publicly accessible locations, that's true. Project will be visible in the vegetation, other factors such as distance, topography, screening, and softened visibility of it.
I think the difficulty for me is, and I get your point, I'm following you. I'm just stuck on, I guess I would come down on moderate. I don't, it's small to, for me, without having enough information, I'm still feeling it's moderate at this point without something to sway me one way or the other. But there's no middle ground, these choices.
Well, and again, that's why you have to use your best judgment when we do seeker. So if you did find it's a moderate to large impact, we can talk about that, and then we can talk about what mitigating factors might be and how we would get to the point of that being mitigated so that you felt that that was adequately addressed. I think that's really where we call it fall. So,
Sean.
See, I don't think it's necessarily moderate.
Yeah,
well, that's the discussion we're
Look
looking
at,
at.
okay, 95% of the project is basically been aesthetically approved and stuff. So you're looking at the whole of maybe 2% or less of the project right there. So
Much less than 2%.
okay, so to me, you would just do what is necessary to get that over the goal line. When everything, you're sitting there on the goal, and you got 1 yard to go. Just give us some idea. I mean, we've asked this, we had somebody with some air conditioning. She went to the local landscaping company, and they did some really nice renderings of a fence and plantings. And, to let us know what she was going to do. And it got approved. And basically, we're not asking anything more of you than we did of that homeowner. Give us an idea.
I'll discuss it with the team. Yeah, I'll discuss it with the team. I think that, just as an aside though, the aerial photo does give some indication of, how the facility lines up with other improvements to properties that aren't on our project.
Yeah.
Namely Four Brothers, and then I don't even know exactly what that one is.
is there a billboard somewhere in here?
No, the billboard is on the
The north side, right
Yeah,
Dave's.
It's on Dave's, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's further
Right
up.
where that woods is almost like an A, almost, I guess.
It's further up.
That's the double full billboard. Isn't there a smaller
Yeah.
single panel billboard set at an angle like right here?
but Tom, I hear what you're saying, and I'll discuss it with the
Yeah,
team.
I mean-
I do want to get it across the
I mean,
line,
you're so close.
for sure,
I
and I want to remain close.
yeah.
All right, where are we?
So to bring it back, again, where Craig was stating too, is that we're not just talking about, that one element, obviously that's, I think, what this part of the discussion is, but when we're talking about impact on aesthetic resources, and the action is visible for public accessible vantage points, it's the project, right? That, is part of the project, but it is the project. So, it sounds like some people were thinking maybe it's moderate to large impact, and I think I heard a few others say maybe not. So, do you want to go through any of these on item 9, or do we want to just think about it?
I think, let's go through, and I think Sean brought up a really good point. Look at the criteria for what would be a moderate to large impact. And
I would also, 9G corridor might be really helpful. Look at these 130-foot trees. You're correct, because JSP has a little billboard right there.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the tree situation leading up to this, the worst case scenario, which is going to be hard for us to understand, is from the case point of the neighbors, right? But and probably, when you get down here towards,
I've got about the screenshot.
yeah, I mean, it's.
Where was that billboard? Is it on this property?
It's basically going to be almost behind that house looking thing.
Oh, it's right here. Yeah, okay, so, I forgot about that, I was thinking about these up here, on these.
Right.
So
Go
there's another
back
one,
down
right,
along
there's
the
one right
highway
there.
there.
So there's one right there on the other property. All right, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt this.
Yeah, no, I think that's just helpful in reference.
Let's go through the questions.
Okay, so impact on aesthetic resources, the land use of the proposed action are obviously different from or in sharp contrast to current land use patterns between the proposed project and aesthetic or a scenic or aesthetic resource. First question is asking if the action will be visible from any officially designated federal, state, or local scenic or aesthetic resource. Again, based on my review of everything, the only thing that we have that's officially designated would be 9G itself, being a scenic road.
Honestly, unless we cut down all those trees, it would be nowhere smaller.
I think it's a small impact.
Does anyone disagree?
No.
Okay.
Next one is that the action will result in the obstruction, elimination, or significant screening of one or more officially designated scenic views.
No.
We'll skip C for the moment. D, the situation or activity in which viewers are engaged while viewing the proposed action is routine travel by residents, including travel to and from work.
You skipped, right?
I skipped C, we'll come back to it.
Oh.
That's what we're on. So I moved on to D, which is asking if the situation or activity in which viewers are engaged with viewing the proposed action is routine travel by residents, including travel to and from work, and whether or not that is in moderate to large or small impact, and recreational or tourism-based activities, and whether or not that is small or moderate large impact. I would say, based on the fact that it's 9G, it's both of those. So the question would be, and this is kind of one of those funny questions, I think, where do you land on whether or not what the impact is on those traveling along the road in those two conditions, in those two scenarios?
I think it's small.
should we look at the criteria? Again, for what standard it would have to meet in order to be considered moderate?
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
No, just have to turn it. So this will be one of the analysis points. Will be visible from a publicly accessible vantage point. And the only publicly accessible vantage point obviously is 9G.
Very visible all year round, no. I think it's going to be partly visible. And they are going to do some screening.
Yeah, I don't think it meets moderate to large impact.
I don't think so either.
No, small. Agrees?
I agree.
So we would do that for both, because obviously those traveling would be the same scenario.
Yeah.
So then... Question E asks if the action will cause a diminishment of the public enjoyment and appreciation of the designated aesthetic resource. And the next one asks if there are similar projects visible within 0 to half mile, half to 3 miles, 3 to 5, and 5 plus.
What's the definition of similar?
That's really up to you, what would be a similar project. It could be a commercial use, it could be a hotel, it's really up to you. I mean, there's nothing exactly the same, there are other commercial uses, obviously. And we'll look at my notes on this
For
one.
the scope of the size, Ruby's is the only thing that
I
is
was
similar.
gonna say, is it Ruby's, I was gonna say Ruby's in terms of its use of what was previously open space for commercial activity is similar, in terms of possible impact.
It's in the size of it.
The number of acres involved.
The workbook talks about it in terms of scale, context, dimensions, density, design, location. The agency will need to decide whether the threshold is for how many other similar projects may be visible. And it depends solely on the context of the community. So I went and took a look, online at the maps. Within 0 to half a mile, because we have these radii in here, there's really nothing like this. A hotel. When you get to the next step, which is 1.5 to 3 miles, you have the Rhinebeck Hotel on Route 9, Whistlewood Farm B&B, Delamater Inn, Beekman Arms, Miraboo, Grand Duchess, Baker House B&B, Red Hook Country Inn. Again, not on the same scale necessarily, I'm just putting out there what are essentially hospitality uses. When you get 3 to 5 miles, you get to the Gables of Rhinebeck and other lodging options over in Kingston. Essentially, you get to Kingston straight line distance when you get to 5 miles. So we know there's a lot around the other side of the river.
So you interpreted similar to be similar in the type of use.
Just in the assessment that I did here, was just looking where are the other hotels and how far away are they, But it's up to you to determine what you think that is. Again, it's really based on, scale, context, dimensions, design.
It says, are there projects similar that are visible?
Right.
So, no.
Within the distance of, those distances, and the answer, I think generally is no. What I did is just say, this is how far away other hospitality uses are, for lack of a better term. That was just my only real.
Even the Rhinebeck Motel, which is not really similar, but, I mean, that's not even visible, even though it's quite close.
Correct. That is the correct answer.
Okay.
Yeah. I think if you're building a Hilton and a Residence Inn, one across the street from the other.
Right, and then again, you're putting it in that local context, that's the thing for discussion. So you're right, Greg, there's nothing visible, at this point, so it kind of stands alone. But there are others within a certain distance, certainly not the same.
I think it's no more similar than that.
I agree.
Everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
So, going back to C then, talking about whether or not the proposed action may be visible from publicly accessible vantage points, looking at it seasonally or year-round. We know that it will be visible from publicly accessible vantage point, being 9G. The question is, where do you think that impact lies, and/or do you think you can answer that at this point in the conversation we had earlier?
I'm willing to go with small impact.
This is, go back at C now?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. C.
After answering the others, I would say, it'd be nice to know what we're dealing with, but I'd have to go with small impact.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the examples, it doesn't meet the criteria for moderate or large.
Yeah, that's
And
what it comes down to.
And again, this is a parallel process. We're doing seeker here. This is not the overall approval of the,
Okay,
the aesthetics
everybody?
of the screening.
So,
I'm comforted by the fact that we still have opportunities in the site plan review to be more specific and more precise about how we're going to protect this viewpoint from the neighbors and from the road. I don't think this is giving up on that idea that we're committed to making sure that this is as attractive as it could possibly be from all vantage points.
Agreed.
Good, so then 9, then after that review, we would essentially land on the answer of no. There is no moderate to large impact. Where would you like to go from here?
Oh,
Second that.
to be perfectly honest.
Didn't really, I guess,
Something
the
easy.
How many
small.
more do we have, Jim?
Well, they're 18, we've now done 6 and a quarter, a third of the way through, something like that. We started one, didn't go through all of
I'm
them.
not picking easy one.
Well, that-
Yeah.
We did the easy ones, we did them all already, quite easy ones.
Come on.
Yeah, no pressure.
Pretty obvious.
Let's see what I left. That's what I'm thinking.
I was thinking air. How about air? How do people feel about air?
That's good.
I think you do there. Questions. So for air, the question is asking if. It's asking the action may include a state-regulated air emission source. The answer to that is no. There is no state-regulated air emission source that is going to be regulated by this action. But the only thing we did ask was just for a little more information on, and this relates back to the whole septic system. When you do have those systems, they do release a little bit of gas. It is typical of any type of system. It's not a regulated amount, but I think I had asked if the board agrees just a little bit more information because I didn't see it in the brochure information we had about what exactly that is. But I don't believe it meets any of the thresholds here on number 6. But I'll leave that up to the board.
Right. I know that didn't for Rockledge, if I recall correct.
Correct.
No.
Yeah, this is like for a paper mill.
It's for a large commercial.
For a large industrial.
It's for a large operation.
So, no impact.
If everybody's good with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. And if I can bother you to do one more.
14.
14 is exactly where I was going to go. 14, the impact on energy. I was hoping for a little bit more information on this, but I do believe we're in pretty good shape on this one. The first question is asking if a proposed action will require newer upgrades to an existing substation. The answer in part 1 to that was no. So I don't believe that that's the case. The part 1 did ask how much energy was going to be used. We don't have that information as an estimate, doesn't have to be exact. So I just still think we need to ask for that to be filled out. And Sean, I have a number of questions or comments to your responses to your responses, but I'll send those to you separately.
Okay.
Just about some things on the part 1, just so we can make sure that all the boxes are properly checked.
Yes, I picked up on a couple of things too, so.
So, requiring new upgrades to an existing substation, I don't believe that'll be the case, given the number of units. I don't know that for sure, but the applicant has answered that would be no. We could leave that one for later and come back to it if you want. The next one, will the action require creation or extension of an energy transmission or supply system to serve more than 50 single or two-family residences or serve a commercial industrial use?
No.
Well, it is. This is a commercial use. But the question is, will it create, require the creation or extension of an energy transmission or supply system? Technically, the answer is yes. Obviously, we have to hook this up to a power line, but it depends on how far you want to go down that road. Just to go through the remaining 2, will it utilize more than 2,500 megawatt hours per year of electricity? No, it doesn't come even close. That would be the equivalent of like the entire village of Rhinebeck, just as a comparison. And then will the action involve heating and cooling more than 100,000 square feet of building area completed? I believe it was under 100. I checked my notes. I think we're well under 100,000 square feet. And we did get information from you, Sean, that you guys will be using heat pumps, I believe.
That's
on
correct.
units. So, and if you remember, we asked for this before, so we are looking at efficient units. Obviously, everything has to be spec'd out to what the state requirements are, building code, that type of thing. So any questions or thoughts on this one? Yeah, you're using air source heat pumps for heating and cooling. Likely propane in the administration building for the kitchen, but not in the hotel buildings themselves. They will put in high efficient utilities. And again, you know, Sean, you had said you haven't looked into whether any upgrades to the transmission system will be needed. Obviously, you're going to have to bring something into the site. We just don't know what at this time. And they'll have to meet the energy code.
Well, questions A and B seem to ask for specific information. You know, either it's true, it's yes or no, but I don't know the answer to it.
Okay.
So for C and D then, is everyone comfortable that it would be no or small impact because the numbers we're talking about, we're actually meeting numerical thresholds are nowhere near. So
Yeah,
C and D we're comfortable with. There's no or small impact. I think, I mean, I can bring up the online if you want, or we can just call it and go to another one. Go to another one. All right.
Have a recommendation, John?
I mean, we can try. Let's go to noise, odor, and light. I have a couple questions on that one. But the first one is asking if the proposed action will produce sound above noise levels established by local regulation. Sorry, I did all this analysis. I do like it. Based on the Part 1 questions and our review of the materials, the proposed action will produce noise that will exceed existing ambient noise levels during construction, operation, or both. The Part 1 question states that during hours of operation, typical noise associated with construction equipment activities will take place. It also notes that the action will not remove existing natural barriers that could act as a noise barrier or screen. Based on the proposals, trees will be removed and ground disturbed for the development. However, significant stands of existing trees and land area will remain undisturbed. When we look at this further, the town of Rhinebeck, section 12558 does have noise regulations that were enacted to preserve, protect, and promote the public health, safety, and welfare, peace, and quiet of the inhabitants of the town. The code is very detailed, encompasses many areas of potential noise that is regulated. Some specific acts or events intended to be controlled that could relate to any development project include construction, repair, demolition, air conditioning, refrigeration, ventilation, machinery, and other noise generators. The applicant, as all applicants for construction and demolition activities are required to do in the town of Rhinebeck, must abide by the code regulations regarding noise. Based on the Part 1 question, and assuming the zoning code noise regulations are adhered to during construction and by visitors to the hotel motel once open, as is required by any new development and all residents and visitors to the town of Rhinebeck, the answer to the question of whether or not the project will produce noise above levels established by local regulation would be no or small impact, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
Others?
All right, so the next one, B, is asking if the action may result in blasting within 1,500 feet of any residence, hospital, school, licensed daycare, or nursing home. Sean, this response letter noted you're not going to do any blasting. There may be rock removal, but it will not be blasted.
That's
So
correct.
the answer to this would be, in my opinion, no or small impact. It asks if the proposed action may result in routine orders for more than 1 hour per day. This is the one where I was asking for a little bit more information on the details of the septic system. We know that there will be some type of emission. It is typical emissions, and these types of systems are used routinely, but I just don't have a detailed answer for the board on that one. The seeker does ask if the action will generate or emit methane, and that is what would, potentially come out of that septic system. So I just thought we needed potentially more information on what that number would be. But there is no numeric threshold in here. It's something the board will just have to see on. So John, that, again, one of my comments I'll send back to you.
Okay.
The next ones are where it's a little trickier. We have talked about lighting a number of times in the past. first question is asking if the proposed action will result in light shining onto adjoining properties. I've noted that the lighting plan has been provided that shows the illumination area and foot candle levels. The lighting plan notes all exterior lighting is full cutoff and dark sky compliant down lighting. The lighting plan shows light will not shine into adjoining properties, which is not to say you can't see the lighting from other properties, but they won't shine off the property itself. But the parcel is currently undeveloped, so obviously when you go in there and put new lighting in, there will be a change from what exists today, particularly during leaf-off times. The sub-question further asks if the action will remove existing natural barriers if it acts as a light barrier or screen. Part 1 notes that the action will not remove existing barriers. However, as we know, there will be obviously tree removal and some grading done for the purposes of putting the development in, but there will still be significant stands of existing trees and land area will remain undisturbed. That's about the best I can do for that question, D. So, based on what we have, I don't believe the action will result in light shining onto adjoining properties, but light will obviously be visible if you look toward the property. So the question would be, do you think there would be, I can bring up the lighting plan, I can find it if you want, bring up the lighting plan.
Is that another area where, as we go through site plan review, we have greater opportunities to ensure that we're protecting the light pollution?
Yeah, and we always check that. It's just that the applicant's letter had some sort of statement that was like totally premature to be giving the specifics on, what kind of lighting fixtures are being used. And I know that we have a local requirement for dark sky compliance, and that would seem to address this.
Well, we would require it as part of the site plan.
Right. But Jim is right, because the area is being lit, even though you won't see the lights themselves. They are lighting an area, and that will be seen probably through trees, unless it was totally surrounded by evergreen.
I don't think it's going to be lighting on existing properties.
And that's the question, is off property
Right.
shine, not,
Yeah, I mean,
not really see it.
Like, it's going to be visible, yes. Is it going to be lighting up someone else's backyard? No.
And if this were in isolation, like way out, Slate Quarry Road or something like that, where there's nothing around, then yeah, you might have some impact. But given that there's car dealerships and other things in the immediate area, if it has any impact, it's bound to be small.
So we both know or small impact for D.
Yes.
And then for E, the proposed action may result in lighting creating sky glow brighter than the existing area conditions. Now, again, they will be dark sky compliant cutoff lighting. So sky glow, there shouldn't be any uplighting or direct lighting going up. Obviously, you can have reflections of snow on the ground or other things like that, but that, that's in the territory of any lighting. So I think that this town code is intended to minimize, if not essentially eliminate sky glow
Right.
to the extent feasible.
Is there any kind of a certification that comes with lighting that is dark sky compliant? Because I've seen some applications where we get pictures of the fixture, and you see that there's a light bulb there, and it's a lantern. And for me, that's not a dark sky compliant fixture. The dark sky compliant, your source is going to be well within the upper reaches of the shade, and it's going to shine only down and only light up landscape. Right.
So this is what they're proposing for the LED.
So it's-
Okay.
And then bollard with the cap on it.
Yeah. So
What are
that
these,
kind of answers
what are these
your question.
symbols, yeah, what are those referred to? Is there one that we can rely on that's night sky friendly or nighttime friendly?
I'd have to look up with, I honestly forget, I didn't dive into it that far.
Yeah, I don't know, it's got a symbol on there that says something good for nighttime sky, but does that fulfill the requirement that we have in our, I mean, that fixture looks like the kind of fixture that we want, that only shines down.
Correct. It needs to be light that only shines down, and that is cut off, and I believe that that's.
Right.
How are we doing?
Doing pretty good.
Is that finish that one?
That does finish at 15.
And how many are we doing now?
Not too many between that. How many we did? We did 15. We did 14. We got 10. We did transportation 13. We did 9. 1, 2, 3.
Leave us enough for next time.
Well, I'm going to recommend unless
Somewhere around 9
there's,
or 10 to be
so we're around 50% through.
roughly halfway.
I'm going to recommend that we stop for this evening and conclude the rest of our business on the agenda, and because we're not going to get through it all tonight. So, is everybody in agreement that that's a reasonable approach? Okay,
Good compromise.
thank you. All right, I believe,
Thank you very much.
well, I believe we still have a public hearing. Is it open, correct?
Okay.
So, at this time,
I just wanted to say before you move on from the seeker issue, are you going to want someone from CPL here at all for any of the questions going forward? I don't know the answer to it.
yeah,
I believe I reached out to Chris. I don't know what the holidays are.
Yeah,
right
oh,
now.
the hol-
I believe I reached out to him. I'm supposed to have something all okay.
yeah, I think we're going to look at the ones that are remaining that could get very technical and probably request Christian's presence at that meeting. And Sean, we probably should be communicating with you because you seem to be carrying the weight of being representative of the whole team. And maybe when we get to the more technical ones, you may want representatives here that can answer some of the technical questions, unless you feel you're the expert on it.
No, I don't feel I'm the expert
Okay.
on a lot of those technical things, so I do appreciate you
Yeah.
just giving me a heads up, and I'll do my
Well,
best
let's
to
have
coordinate.
you and Jim
We'll
talk.
coordinate with.
We'll
That sounds perfect.
coordinate so that you have this equal opportunity to bring your technical experts here, so that conversation can be
Sure.
as appropriate and complete as we can make it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, anything else, John?
No.
Okay, so the public hearing is still open. If there are members of the public here that wish to comment, please do so.
I'd like to comment.
You need to go to the microphone and introduce yourself and have your comments.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? My name is Melissa Schultz, and I live at 39 Hook Road. And a few of us in the neighborhood got together. Sean had presented, and the Rhinebeck Villas had presented the plans to us. And apologies if one of these things was talked about. I didn't arrive late tonight, I'm sorry. We have many concerns, but one concern, and I'm wondering if I missed it, if it was talked about tonight, is the wastewater treatment options. I know there are issues. I know the town of Clinton, with the Six Senses project, there are some issues that have been raised in regards to that project, and also there was an issue with a Red Hook project. Our concern is that if the water treatment option, if the water treatment facility is set closer to our properties versus, it feels like they want it as far away from the hotel as possible, which means it's closer to our properties, and we want to ensure that it's not going to have an impact on our water, obviously, and our soil and our environment. So that's one huge concern. Another concern is the traffic. For anyone who ever drives on 9G and Middle Road, it is a very dangerous intersection. There are cars speeding at 55 miles an hour, people coming out of Middle Road from either direction, and it poses, as it is today, it's dangerous. My fear is that when Rhinebeck Villas opens, the traffic is going to increase, it's going to be more of a problem. There was a traffic study done, but my understanding is that that traffic study studied the traffic from the entrance to the hotel as opposed to Middle Road and 9G. So I feel very strongly, especially as a parent of a child, I feel very strongly about having a traffic light there. And I believe that's a New York State issue.
We have addressed that question in the past.
Oh, you have?
The installation of a traffic light is not under the responsibility or purview of the planning board.
Okay,
That's
got it.
a DOT question, and I believe that question has been forwarded on to DOT by other neighbors, so
They actually responded.
I do know that.
Yes. And they said if there are no accidents there, there's nothing we can do, which to me isn't the right answer. But is it possible to, I understand it's a DOT issue. Does that mean the town has absolutely no control over that? Or Rhinebeck Villas has no control over that?
That's correct.
Okay, got it, thank you for
Now,
that.
you did miss quite a bit of discussion about traffic, and you can certainly go back to the video.
I will.
And it will
Thank
be
you.
there for all of you
Okay.
who want to see it 2 or 3 or 4 times. We'll be going again back to that. But the traffic issues were discussed quite at length
Got
prior
it.
to this. And I think the board is certainly well aware of the issues that have been raised by the neighbors, and we'll continue to look at that.
Okay.
But the traffic light situation itself is not part of our review process.
Got it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
Catherine Clark from 60 Moon Lane. I just want to reiterate my support for the comments, particularly about the sewage and the water usage, where the outflows go, any impact of it being closer to our properties than back closer to the hotel. I think that, you know, when I look at other density of use in the neighborhood, you know, if this were residential, could maximum have about 6 houses, I think, in that area, and the water usage and the sewage outflow that would happen from 6 houses is very small compared to what's going to happen with a 60-room hotel. I don't know where those things get measured. I mean, it could be many other kinds of commercial use that wouldn't have that water usage and that sewage outflow. So those are some of the primary things that we're concerned about. And then what came up today about odors hadn't even occurred to me, but it definitely rang a bunch of bells. So, thank you.
All right, if there's no more comment, I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing until February 2nd.
So moved.
Motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
We now have before us 2 time extensions. The first was a correction that Jim is going to speak to, and that is for Rock's Ledge.
So last month, Rock Ledge came in asking for an extension on the project. And I incorrectly reviewed the section of the code related to a minor subdivision that had no conditions, and it was a conditional approval. So the conditional approval has a different timeline and setting to it. So my mistake. And so I just wanted to come back to the board to ask if we could correct that mistake that I made, so that the minor subdivision element of the timeline extension will be done properly, so that it, let's go through this. Again, it's a paperwork extension. There's no changes to the plans whatsoever. This is just an extension request for the ability to come in and get the project signed. And so I'm asking the board to just essentially take back the previous approval that I asked you to do and replace it with this one, saying that in consideration of a request timely made per section 125.78 and 101.44, the town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby grants a 6-month extension for the satisfactions of conditions or requirements set forth by the Planning Board's approval resolution for site plan approval and minor subdivision approval of the Rock Ledge project that was approved on June 16, 2025, and extending the satisfactions of conditions or requirements from December 16th to June 16th, 2026.
I move we approve. Motion second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries.
Gretchen will replace the previous one entirely with this one, and they should be up to speed. The second timeline request that we had was for Grassmere House. Haven't brought that one up in a while. They are still waiting on getting approvals to connect into the village water system. We did receive an email. We did receive a request from their representative, their attorney, asking for the extension. However, we then got an email that said that the DEC has apparently moved forward with their necessary paperwork on this, and that there's no longer a need for an extension on the project, as the approvals in place are good until February 12th, 2026, and the applicant intends on having the plan signed prior to that date. Now, there is a little hang up on that.
Here's my concern. So just to refresh your memory. There were a number of outside agency approvals associated with our site plan approval for Grassmere. And many of them took an inordinate, what seemed to me, amount of time, DEC, DOT, DOH, and they had, within the last few months, gotten all of those outside agency approvals except for their agreement with the village, which was contingent upon the village getting approval from DEC for the expansion of the water district. According to the DEC website, that DEC authorization was approved, and the applicant now feels that they have everything, they've satisfied all of the conditions attached to the approval. My question is, I do not believe that we have in hand yet, well, I haven't seen the actual paperwork on that, I think that is easily obtained. What I don't believe we have yet in hand is a copy of a signed agreement between the village and the Grassmere to actually allow the purchase of water from the village. So while the DEC piece is complete to my knowledge, I haven't seen an official document. It is the memorandum of understanding, if you will, between the village and Grassmere. So I have conferred, and we all seem to believe that without that, I don't have the documentation I need, that agreement is in place. I think the preliminary work to do the agreement is in place. I just don't know that they've signed it. And they could have, I just don't know.
So I think the thing to do would be to maybe punt on this for tonight. We can put it back on the agenda in 2 weeks, because they made the time the request, so I don't think there's any issues there. We can take that forward. It doesn't actually expire until February 12th, so I think we take it up in 2 weeks, and that time we can catch up with Nick and just see where we stand.
I mean, as long as we've got enough time left.
Yeah.
I mean, the other option for me is just to approve his extension and be safe there.
We can do that too.
Didn't Locust Hill have to go through the same process and they got some sort of like a letter of intent to serve from the village?
For workforce housing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they were outside of the
Similar to the
area.
There's something sticking in my brain that there was a difference between what workforce housing had to obtain and what Nick has to obtain. I don't want to talk to that because I don't have the facts. But yes, it was similar. But when I asked that question repeatedly about workforce housing, they indicated they had what they needed from the town, right? They had an agreement with the town and the village.
For water was the village.
The water was the village.
And I think one of the things that and I don't know the mechanism behind this, but having had some experience with municipal water systems and, big consumers, these days it's typical to put in an entire valve pit with backflow prevention, and that can be quite costly. And it may be that there's some sort of a requirement that is being worked on between the two parties that might go beyond just that simple letter of, oh yeah, we'll sell you water when you're ready.
Well, that's, I think, the information we don't have that we need. Is there a preferred way to go with this, John?
Well, my suggestion would be, I think you can grant the extension tonight if you want to. I mean, I don't see how waiting is going to change things. It's nice that it's progressing, but in a simplistic way, the way I view this is that the DEC approval means that the village is authorized to enter into the agreement now, and that's certainly a big step forward, but it doesn't mean that Grassmere's got an agreement. And so I wouldn't be signing the maps until we've gotten a copy of the agreement.
Yeah, that's my position, and when I get those copies, I mean, I firmly, because we've been waiting on this a long time, I want to double check back with Jim and Gretchen and John that all of the permits and approvals that they've got in place are there. This is a big thing to sign, and I want to make sure, I'm going to be double checking that we have absolutely. So, and John's recommendation, and I'm okay with that, is we just go ahead and grant them the extension, and then they're covered, and we're not scrambling 2 weeks from now to figure it out. So Anybody disagree with that?
No, that's
I
fine.
move we do that.
Thank you, second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. We have a couple of other things, and then the last thing I want to bring up is I believe we all received a request today from the representatives from Swiss and Prince about scheduling, and I wanted to talk about that and see what your sense was of that. So, go ahead, Jim, the sign referral.
Well, let me, I'm finding the file for that one. So the next one is the Town of Clinton Freshwater Wetlands Local Law Amendment. They're sending this out as required through their New York State General Municipal Law, Section 239M and NN requirements. Asking if we have any comments on it. I wanted to say anything. Essentially, they're making some minor changes to things, some wording changes. Really, it's their code. None of it directly impacts the town per se. Obviously, there can be creeks and streams that flow between the two. But being the town code, I didn't see anything that would directly impact the town. Didn't see any reason why the planning board would refer anything back other than say it was a local decision. Unless you had any comments based on the items that I listed here, which I thought were kind of the major issues.
I think your motion is probably leave it up to them.
That's where I was landing on, unless anyone else disagrees.
No. Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Craig, second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. All right.
All right, and then the next one is in referral from the zoning administrator for a sign. I'll bring it up on the screen. In Astor Square, yet again, we have another sign coming in. Let's see. Oh, sorry, it's on my screen, not on yours. Tenant moving in, my eye doctor. We're looking to put a sign in on the building itself. This is the sign, and that's the rendering where it would be located. And then they're also looking to put a sign out on the sign out by the road. And I don't see any problems with this. I've been working with Brian for a couple months now on updating the sign code. I think this is generally consistent with what we're looking to do in the sign code. I actually sent Brian a draft over the holidays. He hasn't had a chance to look at it yet. But I don't really see any issues with it as far as it goes. This one is the same as the others, and the one that's going to be interior meets the sign size and the general criteria of just trying to keep it clean and fresh and not, whatever. So I don't see any issues with the proposal.
Any problems, concerns?
Yeah.
Motion? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll let Brian know. Thank you.
All right, the letter that we received today, can you open that up, read it or something, I don't remember. It was for a walkabout or something?
Yeah, the proposed driveway.
Yes.
Oh, did we know at the
To
last
walk the
meeting?
driveway route.
Hmm?
The last we heard from the applicant is they didn't see why there would be any need to walk.
Well, that's what I was recalling, but then this request came in today to schedule something at our earliest convenience. I don't,
So, as you remember, at the last meeting, I had just put a comment in my letter
Yeah.
because a new application came in just saying the board should decide if you want to discuss and decide whether or not you'd like to do another walkthrough because the driveway location was in a new place versus where we had discussed it previously. And the applicant didn't seem like they wanted to do that, and let me know up here, pushed really hard to say you wanted to either, but now we've had an offer to go out and do it, so.
now?
Now being this evening.
I mean,
We've had an
now?
offer to go out.
I made it to the stone, now, why not?
So,
Could we actually do?
can you and do you want to? I mean, we did walk the general area, we just didn't walk it with an eye on exactly where the
So we
sign
didn't
was. That's
walk
all.
in
Snow?
Or
We don't
ice?
typically walk driveway plans on site plans.
I think in this instance, it might not be a bad idea if you take the time to do it, because I think it may save some time when you come down, when you start looking at whatever the final plan is going to be familiar with what the characteristics of that corridor are, but that's just a suggestion.
Well, I think I think John's point is well taken, where there's something easily accomplished now. I certainly would be feeling slightly different than I personally am we can ask Jim to reach out to, it wasn't Dawn Santiago, I don't know who
No,
it
it
was.
was Brittany Provost.
Brittany. I can ask Jim to get back to Brittany and identify some potential opportunities. Maybe we can look at if there's going to be a thaw or something in the foreseeable future that we can work around and make it available to anybody who feels.
Late next week, we have about 6 days in the high 40s. It's going to freeze at night, and it's going to be high 40s, freeze at night.
And rain also.
Yeah, and then rain on top of it, so I think we'll see significantly less snow on the ground. Just now, is it just going to be sheet ice?
Well, what we can do is ask Jim to coordinate some possibilities. We'll get it on the calendar. If it's not safe, people will make their own determinations about whether they're comfortable going out or not.
Crampons.
Well, if you have them, that's great. You can lead the track. So, does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah.
We'll
Just don't pull too far up the driveway.
It's all the way down.
Then you get into the
all right.
neighbors.
So we know we're
quiet
working
roam.
around weather conditions. We know we're working around changing conditions, and we're working around limitations of certain elderly members of the planning board. So.
But whoever goes out, it might be worth taking a few photographs
Yep.
while you're out there and send them to Jim so that they can be, everybody can look at those during the meeting. And also to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, which has been an issue with regard to this application in the past.
Okay. Does that seem like a workable approach for everybody? All right. So that's the way we'll go at it. So I don't have anything else on the
I
agenda.
have one more question.
Sure.
Has the issue of engineered plans been resolved with regard to this application?
No.
That's something maybe you may want to march that question forward.
Before we do the walkthrough?
Well, when you say the question of engineered plans,
Well, my understanding is that the board's expectation is that the driveway design is going to be approved by a licensed professional engineer. Am I correct? That's what is typical,
it is
typically
typical.
required of other applicants.
Correct.
Similarly situated.
And I think we raised the question at the last meeting and also offered a suggestion that they would want to engage whoever they were going to use with CPL to expedite the conversation. And the answer I believe we got was that the engineering would be done in-house between.
Well, I don't even know what that means.
What I thought was said was that Zach and Christina would be overseeing the preparation of the engineered drawings. But we can confirm
Okay,
that.
I guess my response to that is that will the drawings be stamped by a licensed professional engineer?
Okay. Jim, as you're reaching out, can you forward that specific question to them? And let's get an answer, one way or the other. And then we can move from there once they tell us what their intent is.
Because certainly Christian should understand what he's looking at.
Absolutely. Anything else?
Move we adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nice to see you all. Happy New Year.